Welcome everybody. We're just allowing everyone to filter through from the Hay Summit website. Thank you so much for joining us. Just whilst we're waiting for everyone to kind of come to the session, if you aren't already, I would really encourage you to follow Enactus UK on social media. It's a great way to get all of the exclusive insights into what we are doing. We even have an Enactus UK careers account, which has lots of different events, lots of different opportunities. So please do head to Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, whichever one that you use the most, because it's a great way to find out even more about the partnership that we have with PMI and the programme in general. So please do head to our social media pages if you aren't already following us. Before we begin the session, if you have had the pleasure of joining us at one of our Employability Fair sessions yesterday, you will be no stranger to this slide. But if it is new to you, then please do head to the enactusuk.org/join, so you can register to be an official member of the Enactus network if you aren't already. By doing this, it will give you exclusive access to coaching and mentoring from over 220 of our business advisors and business coaches from across the Enactus network. It will also give you access to lots more events like these, as well as that official recognition as an Enactus student. So please do head there and register. We would love for you to join the network. Before we begin, I'm just going to spend a quick 5 minutes explaining what Enactus is if you aren't already part of the network, because I'm aware, unlike some of the university societies, we don't really say what we are on the tin. So it can be a little bit difficult to understand what Enactus is from the name alone. So my name is Caroline and I am the Partnership and Engagement Manager at Enactus UK. Now, Enactus UK is the UK's leading combined youth social action and youth social enterprise charity, which develops thousands of young entrepreneurial spirits every year. So in practice, that means that we aim to be the bridge between the world of work and the world of higher education, because we work to provide skills for students that you don't usually get within your degree, but are really necessary when you enter your professional career. And how we do that is we work in over 65 UK universities running student-led projects which benefit the local community. And these projects, the best of the best, then become social enterprises in their own right. These projects also address one or more of the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals. So a really exciting thing to be part of whilst you're at university. But something that makes Enactus really special is our partnership. So we work with 17 corporate sponsors as a charity who provide us that financial sustainability to give all of these opportunities to you as students for free, with PMI being one of our sponsors. And within that, we then give you exclusive opportunities, like we said, like this session. So exclusive networking opportunities to really develop you as a person before you enter the world of work. We usually find that Enactus students join us for one of three reasons. So they join us to make friends with like-minded people. They join us to make a difference with the projects, so to their local and international communities. But also the third reason is to develop themselves and their employability skills through all of the exclusive fast-track opportunities and networking sessions that we can provide with our corporate sponsors. So even if you join for one of those reasons, by the time that we leave the programme, you'll have had all three. So really, really exciting. We really hope that you do want to join us, and you can do that by heading to enactusuk.org/join. So please do register. However, I am well aware that you are not here to listen to me today. You are listening to our fantastic panelists at PMI. So I will now allow Christina to screen share and pass over to Ashwini, who is really the star of this session. Oh, I think Ashwini, you're just on mute. We might need to unmute you there. There we go.
Thank you, Caroline. I said thanks for setting up that no pressure situation, Caroline. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Good morning, good afternoon to everybody. I'm excited to be here to have a short conversation with you, and subject you to a few slides before we get into that conversation. So if we go to the next slide, I'm Ashwini. I look after Europe and Sub-Saharan Africa for PMI. This is PMI in brief, and really what this tells you is that we are about scale, building competences and capabilities at scale. And we have an interesting business model, which is something that makes us special. So we rely a lot upon a large community of members, over 500,000 people present in 200 countries. And a little bit like Enactus, I would say, organized also into chapters. We rely a lot upon 12,000 odd volunteers, and everything that you see from PMI, or a lot of what you see from PMI in terms of its intellectual content, actually comes from this large number of members and volunteers. And we work with some of the largest organizations in the world who are also close partners. Next slide, please. So first of all, a big thank you to Enactus. I think we've had a great partnership over the last few years, and we are looking forward to making that an even stronger partnership globally, in fact. And I'm looking forward to a bit more of a strategic dialogue on what we can do together. Just the other day, I was discussing with Christina, we need to talk a bit more about Africa, for example, which is where a lot of the world's challenges and opportunities are at the moment. You know this, I'm not going to belabor these points. We've been involved in coaching and mentoring, working very closely with the UK chapter. So Chris is on the call. You've met or spoken with Kiran as well, the current chapter president. Training events participation, we've been involved in judging at Enactus events and so on. Quite a good collaboration, I would say, and something that we need to keep going. Next slide, please. So diving into this, and I want to run through these slides relatively swiftly, and reading about your charter and mission, this is probably not a surprise to you. 41% of the worldwide population is under the age of 25, and yet only about a third of countries systematically consult people in that age group when making national development plans. So, obviously not a good situation. Next slide has a similar statistic on the fact that only 2% of the parliamentarians around the world are under 30, and yet about half of the world's population is under 30. So governments are making decisions and passing laws and bills without involving in a formal, systematic way the people who these laws and bills are most going to affect. And then if we turn finally on the next slide to the corporate world a little bit, we see as well that, again, close to half of the world's population is under 40, and less than 10% of the Standard & Poor's 500 board seats are filled by directors less than 50 years old. Here, although I would argue that the situation is a little bit better because a lot of the value creation is not coming from the S&P 500. I'm talking about the startups, the entrepreneurial ventures, which typically are started by people in a younger demographic. So not so bad there, but still these organizations employ a lot of people, set the tone on a lot of policy initiatives, and it's only appropriate that that representation mismatch is somehow corrected. Next slide, please. And then, of course, this is a little bit surprising because something that we do recognize and everybody recognizes that youth brings together at least these characteristics and to the table. So drive and discipline, we see that in top athletes. Creativity and stage presence, we see that in creative folks. We see impact and leadership skills in people like Malala and Greta. And then, of course, innovative power and creativity, we spoke a little bit about that in terms of startups. So there's a lot of value that you bring to the table. But at this point in time, I also typically pause and say that if you look at the definition of youth, if you look at the United Nations definition of youth, they say it's ages 15 to 24. And I think they also say that this is for statistical reasons, the definition, and there might be other definitions. I'm also fond of looking at the Merriam-Webster dictionary. And if you look up youth on the dictionary, it says, of course, it says young people, so pretty much following the United Nations definition. But it also has another definition, which I think is worth bearing in mind, and that is, and I'm reading it out, the early period of existence, growth, or development. Now, if you think about that for a minute, the early period of existence, growth, and development is not a number. You can be in the early stages of growth and development if you are 15 or 35, 55, or 85, right? So So youth is not a number. I would argue that, yes, it is not only a number, but it is also a state of mind. Now, this is not just an interesting observation. It's something very useful as you engage as youth with people who are not in the same demographic. And I think the discussion is not about demographics here at all. It's about the early stages of something new. And we know that the world is faced with novel problems. Next slide, please. And therefore, these novel problems will often require novel solutions, early stages of something new and development. Now, we know that these are the sort of shocks that are facing the world at the moment, and there will be others. This is not a surprise to anyone. The rise of artificial intelligence, global warming, the rise of technology, the changing globalization perspectives, they will all require fresh approaches to problem solving, and that's something that you can bring to the table as we just discussed. Next slide, please. One of the other things that is worth recognizing that career paths are not likely to be linear on the left-hand side like that. Some organizations may still hold career paths like that, and if you get into those, then I wouldn't say you're lucky. I would say that, sooner or later you're going to be left behind, because a more resilient, a more robust way of building a career now is to see yourself as part of a network, as part of a network of individuals, and in organizations also as part of a network of teams. There are very few things that you can do in any system today completely on your own. Maybe one or two things if you're a genius, but really you're going to have to work with other people. You're going to have to leverage and build upon what's already been done. And that's extremely important. It also has an implication for the sort of skills that we all want to be looking at, regardless of the demographic. And particularly when a bulk of executives say that the future of work will be project based. It's nobody's going to have a year or longer to deliver upon something. It's going to be about frequent iterative deliveries and then improving them as we go along. So the nature of work has fundamentally changed, I feel, and will continue to evolve. Next slide, please. So this is a couple of pieces of McKinsey research coming up. On the left-hand side is actually a very, very interesting piece of research. That's the one at the bottom, defining the skills citizens will need in the future of work. And please note the emphasis on citizens. They do not talk about organizational professionals or volunteers or anyone. Anybody, citizens will need those skills. And they figured out 4 categories of skills. You should download this report and read it, by the way. It's really very, very good. And we've singled out the cognitive set of skills along with the 4 other sets that they have. And we were, of course, as PMI happy that, and we put a, that not too subtle yellow rectangle around planning and ways of working. That's what PMI does. It's important. You need to be able to know how to get things done. But look at some of the others, the importance of critical thinking, the importance of communication and mental flexibility. This is what employers are looking for as well today. People are, I was presenting to IBM yesterday, and they wanted to hear all about mental flexibility and adaptability. That's what they're looking for. That's the sort of capability they're trying to build at IBM. Then on the right-hand side of this picture, you see much of the same thing. The expected future skill needs will require many, many things, but project management, the art, science, and craft of getting things done, in other words, is always going to be a big one out there. The world runs on our ability, on our collective ability to produce outcomes. That's what this slide is telling us. Next one, please. More of the same. I think we should keep moving. Again, when you look at the skills people are looking at, project management is right up there. Next slide, please. And, I like this. We borrowed this slide from one of our client organizations, and it says 21 more jobs, the road to 2029. The vertical axis has the tech centricity of jobs, not a surprise to us. Many of the jobs in the future will be critically dependent upon high tech. And then the time horizon on the horizontal axis. And I put red squares around some of the more interesting jobs. Virtual identity defender, that's got to be a cool job. We see that coming up, honestly, in the next couple of years. Flying car developer, now there's a cool job. That's something I'd love to be doing if I understood the technology a little bit better. But equally, joy adjutants, chief purpose officers or chief purpose planners are going to be critical jobs. And you see here a little bit the balance that's going to be required between tech-oriented skills and jobs and occupations and human-oriented skills and jobs and occupations. So this has honestly never been a better time to be a project leader or to learn project management skills, because none of this is going to happen without a systematic approach to project management, to delivering outcomes. None of this is going to happen without you. But We are all going to have to learn, you are all going to have to learn new skills, which will be essential to staying relevant. To give an IBM example again, we had the global head of their PMO speaking to us earlier on in the week, and he said something interesting. And he's based in Ireland, by the way, Jim Boland, and he mentioned eloquently that the half-life of any given technical skills is a few years. So a technical skill that you start to learn today is likely to be outdated in about 3 years' time. But some of the soft skills like leadership, collaboration, empathy, creativity, these will last with you for a long, long time. You will have to keep working at them to keep them relevant, but they will stay with you. Technology will replace, as looks likely at the moment, many technology skills. Next slide, please. So PMI's perspective is rather simple. We feel that every change maker professional must be capable of a few things. These are complex problem solving. If there's one thing that all of us are going to have to get used to, it is to solve complex problems. Complex problems are ones where you do not get a chance to iterate. You need to get them right the first time. You need to find solutions together. So you can't solve these problems alone. You're going to have to work with a team, and you're going to have to take a multiplicity of dimensions and stakeholders into account. And there are systematic tools and technologies which enable us to do that. So everything begins with a problem. That's how projects come into being, and that's skill number two. We're all going to have to produce outcomes, and that's the core of what PMI does, getting things done. So knowledge of project management tools, processes, technologies to be able to deliver project outcomes and outputs. 3 and 4 go together. 3 is about some of the harder aspects of change and transformation. Get ready to change jobs, get ready to work with a new team, get ready to enter a lockdown, get ready to exit a lockdown, work in hybrid mode, work on site, and so on and so forth. So everybody needs to be transformation ready. Agility is more a mindset. So are you flexible and adaptable? Can you spin on a dime? Can you pivot and react with speed and with purpose when life throws you a curveball? And there's a great example. I think if you pick up one of the recent issues of Harvard Business Review, there's an Airbnb case study, and that's a great one to look at when it comes to this agility, both at the organizational level and at the individual level. And by the way, all these things apply to organizations as well as to individuals. Organizational actions and outcomes are nothing but sort of an orchestrated set of actions that individuals take. So really, the individuals are the key drivers in everything that happens. Next slide, please. The opportunity is massive. The work is getting projectified. The global economy is going to need 25 million new project professionals by 2030. That's a lot of people. 2.5 million people to enter project management related professions every year, including project managers and change makers. And these PMOEs, or project management oriented employment, tend to command a salary premium. And research on PMP, for example, has borne that out with almost 20% higher salaries across 42 countries if you have a PMP. So a very usable skill that employers look for when you enter the workforce, and purely in terms of getting things done. So remember that organizations are commercial entities and they are driven by productivity. Get as many things done as possible to as high quality standards as possible in as short a time as possible, essentially project management. And I would certainly encourage you to take a look at this report. It's the Talent Gap report. It's on PMI's website. A few interesting nuggets of information there in terms of what is happening in this area. Next slide, please. So with that, I wanted to leave you with 3 thoughts really for you to think about. The first one is ability is agility. So whatever you do, move with speed. Those who can fail fast and pivot to what's next are best positioned for the future. I remember graphically about a year ago at this time, there were 2 news articles in the Financial Times in the UK. One said that Pret-a-Manger, the sandwich chain, was laying off 3,000 workers because of the pandemic. And the other one said that Amazon was hiring 3,000 workers because of the pandemic, right? So the life is going to throw at all of us these sort of stark differentials in fortunes and opportunities, and it's those who will be able to move quickly. And that's a learnable skill who will be best positioned for the future. Next slide, please. The second one is that we all know technology rules, but people influence, or I prefer to say that technology might be king, but people are king makers. And yes, disruptive technologies like AI and machine learning and hypercloud and whatever is next they are smart and effective, but we need to keep them only as smart as the people behind them and in front of them. So make sure that you understand digital. It's going to be an absolutely critical skill set to grasp, like reading or writing. But also make sure that we are and you are contributing to systems and processes which keep these technologies a little bit in check. And I'm pretty sure you all watched with interest Coded Bias on Netflix. And if you haven't, I can recommend it. Next slide, please. And finally, it's a leader's world, a project leader's world. So as project professionals or aspiring project professionals, absolutely, you must be up on the latest methods and tools, but you're not going to get far without people skills. And again, not to belabor that point, but at the end of the day, work happens by and with other people. So no matter how much technology you have, please do look to augment that with people skills. Next slide, please. And then just a little bit of what PMI is doing to broad base some of these skill sets. So this is a little bit about Kickoff. It's an app, it's free of charge, and it's a good, quick 45-minute introduction into the vocabulary of project management. And I would say, interestingly enough, depending upon your preference, it takes you through to the waterfall or the traditional methods of project management, but also agile, which is all the rage at the moment, particularly in tech oriented domains. So I would certainly encourage you to take a look at that. As I mentioned, it's fairly simple, bite-sized content, and you get a badge at the end of the day. So something useful to look at as you begin or proceed in your career journeys. Next slide, please. And then Christina said some personal reflections. So very quickly, personal reflections. So the first one, extreme right-hand side, your career is not likely to be a straight line, more likely to be a squiggly line like that with highs and lows and sideways movements. Do not let those discourage you. Keep an eye on your learning, the dotted red line. So long as you're learning and growing and expanding your network and collecting usable experiences, both good and bad, you'll be okay. But don't expect a straight line, and your life will be that much richer for it. Number one. Number two, take the ball, the extreme left-hand side. So there's a lot of work to be done. There are a lot of problems to be solved. Don't wait for somebody else to solve them. You step up and you start doing them. And if it is somebody else's job, they will tell you, you can hand it over to them, but at least the job gets done. So always, always take initiative. That is something that employers look for in spades. And then in the middle, in all this speed and agility and hurry, pause and take the time to ask the right questions. Ask the difficult questions, take the time to reflect and analyze. And we are drowning in information at the moment, and it's good to pause. I would say not once in a while, but always, and ask a few questions like, where is this piece of information coming from? Why now? Who does it benefit? Who does it harm or hurt? What should I do about it, if anything? So ask those questions, come at it from different points of view, and you will find that you will make better decisions and increase the probability of your career success. I believe we might be at the last slide, and yeah, maybe this is just something for me to recommend again. When I started my career in the telecoms world at Nokia many years ago, I was in the professional services space, and David Meister has written extensively about that space, and this is a memorable article. I would encourage you to look it up or just write into me, and I'll be happy to share. It's not how good you are, it's how much you want it. So we spend a lot of time talking about capabilities and competencies and learnings and certifications, and that's all well and good, not a substitute for native intrinsic motivation and energy and purpose and passion. So make sure you start with that. It's about how badly you want it. The rest of it is a little bit easier to fix. Thank you for listening to me very patiently. Looking forward to the discussion.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Ashwini. I've just popped in the chat the PMI kickoff resource that Ashwini mentioned for you to have a look at after this session. Having done the qualification myself, I could really recommend it. It is really easy, a great bite-sized introduction to project management and waterfall method of thinking. So thank you, Ashwini. Like Ashwini said, we are going to go into our panel discussion. And as you can see on the screen, our panelists are there. So I really would encourage you to ask Ashwini, to ask Rachel, ask Chris any questions that you have by popping it into the chat. I know we've had a great introduction into project management and future skills that are needed in the workforce. So please do, those of you who are interested in what's just been discussed, please ask that question that's on your mind. I'm sure there is a lot that you can be thinking of first. But first, I think it would be great to kind of ask each of you really kind of what what is your biggest challenge as a project manager? I know Ashwini's talked about like a lot of the things that are coming up and is drawn on his own experience. But I'd love to know if Chris, you want to start off really, like what you see your biggest challenge as a project manager.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, hi everyone, and a big thank you for taking time out to join us. It's great to see so many people on the call. I guess in terms of my kind of challenges today, I guess I'll call out a couple, and I'm sure these won't come as a huge surprise. The first is the pace of change, and the fact that change is now relentless. So even during my career, if I think back 25 years. We've seen a significant change in terms of the extent of the transformation that we're seeing in all of our lives, whether it's our personal lives or our professional lives. And from a project management point of view, trying to keep up with that and trying to keep abreast of, I guess, the key outcomes that we're seeking to achieve is inevitably more and more of a challenge. So that would be my first observation. And the second, which hasn't changed, and I don't think will ever change in terms of the role of a project manager, is the people element of what we do. So the way I describe it is it's people that deliver projects. Ultimately, it's not processes, it's not technology, it's individuals that make that decision that they want to make some form of change or make some form of mark in terms of their role. So as project managers, it falls to us to, I guess, make sure that we provide the environment in which those individuals can be successful. So I guess that for me is the second of the key challenges that I'd like to perhaps call out today. So there's a couple to get the ball rolling. I don't know, Rachel, if you want to pitch in with a couple more.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, Chris. I think one of my biggest challenges is definitely understanding the ways of working with different people. So especially now that we're all online now, we have seen an increase in global teams, and with that comes with learning how different cultures like to work and their different work ethics, and really understanding what makes people tick in order to drive your project team efficiently and effectively into the targets.
Great, thank you. And Ashwini, do you have any?
Really, I think Chris and Rachel have covered them well, but I'd probably pick out one stimulated by your Enactus definition, Caroline, earlier. When I'm looking at projects, key projects, initiatives, it's always about finding the right leaders, preferably people who can ignite and initiate, right? That's what the N, you had that at the beginning. So people who can take the ball and run with it. My hiring philosophy is hire people you need to stop, not people you need to start, if you know what I mean, right? So it's always easier to hold somebody back and say, no, let somebody else do it, rather than to say, why haven't you gotten along with it? Until now. So yeah, igniters.
Real, thank you. And Chris, you mentioned earlier the people aspect being a real core element to the role, and I'd really love to know about your own journey and kind of what degree you did, and if there is that easy pathway into project management.
So, blimey, I have to cast my mind back a while now. This is going to make me feel very old, and I don't necessarily think I am that old, at least not yet. So I'm one of those project managers, and there are many others that sort of fell into project management by accident. There's this kind of well-known phenomenon of the accidental project manager. So you get that tap on the shoulder from your boss saying, I've got this particular business problem, or I need to implement this change. Can you take a look at it for me? Can I get the job done? Talking to Ashwini's earlier slides. And I guess that was my initial experience of project management. And I kind of haven't looked back, because from that very first experience where I was asked to take that responsibility, it kind of opened my eyes to the role of project management more than anything else I'd really learned at university or considered really as a career. And I guess the reason for that was it gave me that opportunity to really figure out what project management's all about. So, at that point, very early in my career, I was one of the lucky ones that shifted from that kind of assumption that project management is all about, putting a plan together. I call it being a plan jockey. And some of the more kind of administrative things that I'm sure we all imagine project managers to have to do, to what it's truly about, which is getting a bunch of people in a room and doing good stuff, whatever that good stuff might be, and getting the best out of that group. So there's nothing more relevant really to this group, because of course, guess what? That's at the heart of what Enactus does, is getting a bunch of people together to be their best selves and get stuff done. So I think that's the very definition, albeit not the PMI definition, of project management. And I think for me certainly, that early opportunity to experiment and fail fast, I know we talked about that as well, really stood me in good stead to make that decision very early on that was a career that I wanted to pursue. You asked about what degree I did, so I'll give you some of the Dell facts. So I actually studied at York University. I don't know whether there's anyone from York on the call today, but I'm hoping to continue the relationship with York through being one of the business advisors to the York team. And I actually studied what I'll call a hybrid degree. So there are elements of technology, elements of business management, and in fact, elements of foreign language as well. And I guess, the reason for calling this out is, I think, if you are considering a career in project management, you are going to need a range of skills, right? So everything from an appreciation of perhaps the technology through the softer skills or the power skills, as we call them at PMI. And I think, a hybrid degree, anyone studying, a very broad degree, that will put you in a very good position when it comes to pursuing a career in project management. So that's kind of a little bit about how I stumbled into project management, and it's taken me 25 odd years to try and escape it, and I've not yet succeeded. So I'm not quite sure how many more years I've got in the tank, but we shall see.
Thanks, Chris. And then Rachel, I wondered, as the Director of Academic Outreach for PMI in the UK, I'd love to know, if what you personally, what skills you think are the most important for students to work on now to advance their career?
I actually think it's the willingness to learn. You don't have to know it all, but wanting to understand something, and then you're already halfway there if you're willing to do that. It's that passion that project managers have of wanting to see something from end to end and wanting to organize that and kind of drive their team. So it's really honing in those skills and really putting yourself out there to understand everything and understand what other people do. Because obviously as a project manager, you'll be managing a lot of different resources and different people. So you really do need to have a broad understanding of what everyone's up to and actually take a genuine interest. It's definitely all about the people skills in my eyes.
And Tanjeet's just asked a really good question actually, and has said, so you mentioned it's all about the people and that willingness, and they've asked, how do you deal with team members who might have a certain attitude but have really good skills?
Chris, you want to take that first?
Yeah, Srini, do you want to take that?
No, I'll take that. I'll take that, because this is a discussion, after 25 years in telecom. So Taranji, that's a great question. I would say, first of all, be fair, right? If somebody has an attitude, they need to know that they have an attitude. It could be, it's unlikely, but it could be that they don't know they're rubbing everybody off the wrong way. Give them 1 or 2 chances, but not more than 3 strikes and you're out. So remember that, and this has been true for the longest time. You can always teach people skills. Attitudes are hard to teach. So if you don't have a person with the right attitude, even if they're the best performer, they will need to be out, because they will just destroy the team in the long run, and that won't do. Get another one. You can always teach them the skills. We are in a marketplace at the moment of talent. You can buy those skills, but you don't want the team compromised.
Thank you. Yeah, we always say at Enactus UK, we'd much rather will over skill, because like Ashwini said, you can teach the skill, but it's very hard to teach the will. So it's all about having that positive attitude. And then I've got another question just come into the chat, is kind of on a similar vein really, about how can you encourage your team to take initiative over a project? Rachel, you mentioned there's so many different resources, and as a project manager you kind of do need to be an octopus, but how do you encourage the people in your team to really just take initiative?
Yeah, maybe I can start, and then Chris and Rachel, please. It might be simplistic, but people do things because it means something to them, and people do things because it means something to those they care about. So, ask yourself whether you're answering both those questions, and, that might provide a few hints in terms of getting the team to take the initiative. So if it's not all about you, then it's got to be about other people. So.
Yeah, and maybe just to echo Ashwini's point, I think it's about understanding what the individuals are looking to gain, or what makes them tick. It's taking the time early on in a project to sit down and understand the different motives that individuals have, and try and frame the project or what it is that you're asking them to do in a way that benefits them. So everyone has different objectives, I guess, in life, and often it's easier than you might think to align what it is that you're doing in terms of a project with what it is that individual is looking to achieve. But you have to take the time to understand the individual in order to do that. And I think today, because things tend to be very fast-paced, sometimes we forget and we don't sit down and understand those needs. And the result is that sometimes it can be much more difficult to manage those individuals as a result.
Brilliant,
Yeah.
thank you. Sorry, Rachel.
Yeah, I was just going to say, yeah, I completely agree with Chris. And it's really about setting out a clear goal for your team so you all have something to work towards. And also team socials are so important to get to know everyone on your team, because you won't want to work together if you don't know each other. You won't have each other's backs if you don't have that personal level. So definitely the human and people side is so important. And it's very difficult to achieve anything if you are all just strangers.
I think that's a really, great points there of just finding out what make people tick, like what is their passion, why are they involved in this? Yeah, brilliant advice. Another question that we've had to come in is about, Ashwini, we talked a lot about the future and what job titles could be. And Adam's asked, what do you predict the future of project management will be, especially with the advancement of technology?
Great question. PMI, our perspective is that some parts of project management will get automated, like scheduling or, doing multiple scenarios of risks and cost progressions and so on and so forth. But as Chris pointed out, at the end of the day, you got to get a job done. That's people, that's creativity, that's pivoting. So we feel that those skills are always going to remain important. One specific thing that I think will come into project management big time, maybe even formally big time, is change management. And as one of our partners said to us the other day, project management these days is not about saying, here's $1 million and go and build a house, or here's 10 million and go and build a bridge. Project management these days is delivering complex change in a way that brings different parts of the enterprise together. And that's, an orchestration role. That's a leader's role. And therefore, the importance of soft skills and leadership and taking the team along with you, to Taranjeet's question, and so on. So I see that the future is bright. There is always going to be a lot of room for people who can get things done. And again, remember that that's the essence of project management. It's the art and the science and the craft of getting things done. Who doesn't want that?
No, I think that's really great. Chris, Rachel, did you want to touch on those?
No, I think I guess one thing perhaps linked to this is ultimately project management is the application of common sense. And I think maybe as we travel through our careers for some reason, and if I look back, I've seen this happen, we can let go of the common sense, politics and maybe, corporate influences and ways of working and culture start to get in the way. So I guess, perhaps, I guess a word of advice almost is, hang on to that, common sense that, I'm sure you're applying today in those different projects that you're running for Enactus when you join the world of work, because it will put you in a very strong position when it comes to, how you approach project management, whether that's as a project manager or in all the other roles where you'll be expected to manage projects, but not necessarily as your title, your job title. So hang on to that common sense for sure.
Brilliant, thank you. And then I've just had another question through. Catherine's asked, so we've done the challenges, but what do you find to be the most rewarding thing about being a project manager? Rachel, I don't know if I could come to you first on that one.
Yeah, sure. I think everyone can tell I'm definitely a people person. And it's just the beauty of getting to know new people every time you're on a new project is definitely the most rewarding part for me. And then seeing that finish line and everyone, and being so happy with that, and like just having that common goal, that is what ticks for me. Like just knowing that everyone's working towards that one same goal. Yeah, so it's just really rewarding to see projects go over the finish line.
Yeah, thank you. Ashwini or Chris, I don't know if you want to jump in on those.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I for me, getting things done or seeing something to a conclusion is, I guess it's more of an intellectual hit that I get. I said, right, here's a little tool that I've now collected that worked in that situation. I file it away, and then I pull it out at a later time, or in a similar problem or situation, and say, oh, okay, that's cool. I know what to do with this.
Maybe just briefly for me, I think it's similar to Rachel. So, and I'm sure we've all felt this on that one or two projects where it's happened to us, but it's when you feel that buzz, that excitement, that things are just working, and you kind of look around you as the project manager and you say, you know what, we've absolutely nailed this in terms of how we're behaving as a team, the common goal that we share, the productivity that we're achieving, and it's when you kind of feel that buzz that that's the reminder why we chose project management in the first place. And I think that doesn't happen all the time. I think let's face it, there are highs and lows, but when it does, it makes it all worthwhile.
Brilliant, thank you. And then I wondered, Chris, if I could just stay with you, but if I was a student, what could I do to impress you if I was coming to an interview?
So for me, and funnily enough, I'm doing an awful lot of hiring at the moment. It's about passion, and it's about getting that passion across. So I think, particularly in this day and age, where there are lots of people who have, I'll call them the basic technical skills. Mm-hmm. I think we look beyond that now to individuals that are truly passionate about either the industry that they're looking to join, the technology they're going to be involved with, or ultimately their role in project management. So there are different ways you can demonstrate that passion. One of which is, I think if you interview enough people, you kind of get a sense of whether that exists or not. But there are things you can do to build and grow that passion. And one of which is to get involved in opportunities where you can practice the art of project management, right? So this is the whole idea of learning by doing, which I know is something that we as the PMI UK chapter are talking to you guys at Enactus about right now. So I think the days of standing in front of a lecture theatre and preaching at 200-300 people as to how they do something are long gone. I think increasingly what it's about is finding opportunities to go out there and experiment and learn new skills, and then demonstrate those skills when you get to interview. So one of the fantastic things about Enactus is it gives you those platforms and those opportunities to do exactly that. So being able to demonstrate the fact that you're passionate and learning by doing are probably two of the things that I would call out.
Brilliant, thank you. And then Ashwini, you mentioned earlier about kind of the courses that are available, and I wondered if there were any other courses that you would recommend to somebody who's interested in project management to do, like Chris was saying about that learning by doing.
So if I were to think about non-project management courses that I would recommend, I think there's one particular one that has stayed with me a while. It's a UPenn online course on positive psychology, and I would certainly encourage everybody to do it. It's something that speaks a lot to the power skills and soft skills that we've spoken about, and I think it will be very, very useful to you. It's been very useful to me. It takes a bit of time. It's a 5-module course, but taught by one of the best professors worldwide. It's a great course. It'll give you some practical tool sets on resilience and grit and so on and so forth that you can pull out and use for yourself or for other people. So I would certainly recommend that closely, apart from all the project management related stuff. So.
Of course. And then I think we talked a lot about like the future of work and kind of where the skills gaps might be. But I wondered if individually you could think about your sector area and then what skills gap you see specifically in your sector area. Rachel, I don't know if I could go to you first on that one.
I think so. I'm in the software industry now, so I guess a bit of background about myself. I started as a management consultant in PwC 3 years ago. I graduated 3 years ago, and then I decided I actually wanted to do be a project manager as opposed to consulting companies about their large infrastructure projects. So I made the move to software, and then I realized that because software has been around for a long time, but we've had this digital transformation boom over the past 20 years. So there's been more and more people roped into these project manager roles, and we're delivering projects that we don't have a lot of lessons learned for, and they're quite often quite small projects or really large projects. So it's really right now building that database of lessons learned for newer project managers to review into. In terms of skills gap, I'm starting to see a lot of hybrid roles between Scrum Master, like technical PM and project managers. So I don't know if that's the right thing to do, but what I'm trying to say is that it feels like as a project manager, you need to be more agile now is definitely the word I would use. So instead of traditional project managing, there's a lot more agile management.
Brilliant, thank you. And then could you just quickly explain what a Scrum Master is, just for those who aren't au fait with that language?
Good luck, Rachel.
So I think different software companies have different definitions of a Scrum Master, but for me, a Scrum Master really deals with the low-level tasks within Jira. So they use like this, I don't know what you call it. It's like a dashboard Kanban way of managing tasks, as opposed to project managers. We love project plans and schedules. We like to be like, this is when this task starts. It's meant to take 5 hours and it's meant to be done by this date, tickety boo. But Scrum Masters, they have a Kanban board. So it's like, this is our priority for today. Those priorities can change and dependent on like customer demand and stuff like that. So they're very reactive, but they also have their own kind of like to-dos, like business as usual stuff, tasks. I don't know if I explained that very well.
No, I think you get it. So project managers is like, you've got the overall view of the project from start to end, and then the Scrum Master kind of fights the fires that might come up as and when during the day a little bit, and then have those day-to-day priorities.
Sort of.
It's absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with rugby. Let's just
well, that's where my mind went first, Chris. I'm glad you clarified. But I wondered, Chris, if I could go to you about the kind of same question as Rachel, really, the skill gaps that you see in your sector.
So what we've seen, I work for a large software company, so similar industry to Rachel, but what we've seen in recent years, because in fact we are heavily recruiting, is we can find lots and lots of people who are project managers in the sense that they tick a number of the boxes. They know how to put a plan together, they know how to get from the beginning to the end of a project. But what we see is a lack of what I'll call, ironically, given what Rachel has just said, consultative skills. So for example, in my line of work, a lot of what we do is customer facing. So you need to have the ability to engage the customer, build the relationship with the customer, manage the expectations of the customer, bring the customer with you on the journey. So this is very much about soft skills, power skills, emotional intelligence, empathy. And whilst we find lots and lots of people out there who, on paper can run a project, we find the majority lacking in terms of those more consultative skills, which when you're in a client-facing environment is difficult, right? You can imagine the situations that come about. So that's the big gap for me. So, I think hence, some of the conversations earlier in this presentation are highly relevant in terms of how you can address that gap and maybe, bring that out in your skill set as something that is a strength for when you're having those conversations with, potential employers in the future.
Thank you. I'm very aware of the time and how quickly time's flown away from us. So I wondered if we could end by each of you giving maybe the best piece of advice that you've been given in your career. So for our students at the start of the career, what's the best advice that you've been given? And Ashwini, if I could head to you first on that one.
Sure. I part of that was on my slides, by the way. 2 out of those 3 were given to me by my first boss at Nokia 25 years ago or something like that. So those 2 are still relevant. And then another one by another ex-boss. And that was a little bit interesting as well. And, over the course of your career, you'll find yourself wrestling with a lot of decisions. Should I go left or right? Should I fire this person or now or later or at all, and so on and so forth. And quite often, and you will talk and consult with other people and so on and so forth. Sometimes that helps, sometimes not. And the algorithm that I got was the following: if you can justify the decision to yourself as a rational person, so imagine yourself having a dialogue with your own rational self, and if you can justify the decision to yourself, you can justify it to anyone. So just go ahead and do it.
Brilliant, thank you. Rachel, same question.
I think for me, it's definitely say yes to everything, especially early on in your career, and have no ego. That's very important, just operating in a way that's true to yourself and having no ego will bring you very far in your career, I'd say.
Brilliant, thank you. And then Chris, final words.
So again, it was my first boss who shared these words of wisdom with me, and they may not immediately seem obvious. Perhaps they will to some, but I will guarantee you this: in a few years, for those of you that enter the world of project management, it will become very relevant and possibly even profound. And hence, I'm going to share this. And it really is quite noddy when you say it, but believe me, it will come home to roost in the years to come. And that is, if you can't kick it, then it's not there. Now I can explain that if you like, but the silence, awkward moment. So the reason why my boss kind of used that phrase was, and I'm sure we've all been in this situation, particularly as a project manager, where you're reliant upon other people, and you're taking a lot of what they do potentially at face value. Many projects have come unstuck because the project manager hasn't asked one simple question, and that is, show me. So hence, if you can't kick it, then it's not there. The implication being, a lot of the time, people will tell you that something is done or something's been created or something is where it should be. 9 times out of 10, you'll find on a project that isn't always the case. So simple things like, show me, make an awfully big difference in terms of the success of even the largest of projects. And maybe that's the other point, is that no matter how large and complex the project gets, how scary the numbers might look, how scary the number of people might look, how scary the budget might be, the reality is the same practices and the same processes and the same application of common sense will get you there as the smallest project.
Brilliant, so, thank you.
There you go.
That is brilliant. I'm very conscious of the time, but thank you so much for each of you for really taking the time out of your day to share with our students the best advice, insights into being a project manager across all of your sectors. Hopefully students should have taken a lot from this panel. I know I have, but for now, hopefully we'll see you later on in our other employability fair sessions. But thank you so much. I'll pause the recording.